Just how fast can the Tesla Model 3 long-range charge on a V3 Supercharger? And what's the charging curve like? Today we're going to find out. We ran the battery all the way down to 1% to see how it would get on. And stick around for when we analyse exactly what happened and talk about the overall Supercharger network.
Okay, Blake, we're about to switch over to you plugging into the supercharger. It is nearly just drive up and plug in and walk away. There's no tapping of cards. There's no real activation you need to do. So it is the dream for an EV driver. And these are the V3. So they're the newest and greatest, fastest Tesla superchargers that are out there. And when you're navigating to the supercharger via the built-in navigation, the Tesla preconditions, etc. So we'll roll the footage and we'll get the whole charging session started.
Yeah, so just getting into the car, make sure I have it set. I actually didn't push in the plug right at all the first time, so I had to get back out. But there it is. And look how fast that ramps up. I mean, straight up to about 200 level. It's just absolutely incredible. Now, the Model S and the Model X will go up to 250-ish, but these latest Model 3s are looking at just over 200. So we might just pause the video there for a second, Derek. I'll just pause that now as we get through the video, because I just want to talk about this. It's going so fast, we can't even keep up with it. Now, you can really, I don't know if it comes out on the video, Derek, but you can really hear the fans trying to keep that car cool, especially as it's pulling so much juice from the supercharger. And you actually get a lot of heat losses as well. So although it might be delivering a certain amount of kilowatts, that's not what's coming into the car, because we've got losses on heat, just trying to keep the things cool and stuff like that. But yeah, it ramps up so fast. Like 10% is hit in 3 minutes. You know, that's just incredible. Me coming from an old Nissan Leaf, just to see those speeds is mind-boggling, you know.
Now, did you set the destination as the charger? So it would, and did it come up as preconditioning the battery to get when you got there as well?
Yeah, that's hugely important to do that, so that you actually get that the highest speeds possible. And also at this stage, I just wanted to introduce the FastNet graphic, if we can, the chart that shows, because the speeds that I experienced in this were a little bit lower than I was expecting. Now there's various differences involved. You know, you can never exactly predict what's going to happen with these charging sessions, but I didn't quite hold on to that 200 kilowatt peak. It really ramped down in a very linear fashion from earlier than I was expecting, based on the FastNet charging curve that you can see there. But still, like, as it's hitting 20% now, you know, we're still pulling 170 kilowatts. So will we let that video roll again, Derek?
Perfect.
We'll just hit play there right now. So you can really see how it tapers off, and it is quite linear. It doesn't just drop off a cliff. I know when you see Tom Mologney over in the States, when he did the Mach-E, and it was pulling great, you know, and then all of a sudden just boom, drop down. Very much linear in this Model 3 in my experience here. But even,
now,
you know,
sorry, Blake, did you take any note of, down at the bottom of the screen, the cost of this charging? I can see that the euros and cents is creeping up there.
It is up there, yeah. But this was a press car, so it was on someone else's account. But yeah, we might just hit pause there again for a second.
Perfect.
Because it just goes so fast. You know, we didn't even get to comment there. As it went through 30%, it was still holding on to 150 kilowatts, which is really good. Now, that is also a point that I want to talk about, because it is what the Mach-E charges at, 150 kilowatts. But also the Polestar is in that region also.
But that's peak.
That's peak charging, yeah. And people don't see that. They see an ad for, oh, that's got 100 kilowatt charging, and okay, it does, if you find a charger that can deliver that and the battery's at the right temperature, and it'll do that for a couple of minutes. You know, it'll start falling off. So the charging curve is something that we might make a full video on in the future, but it's something that people really need to understand. And when you see people at a fast charger on 95%, and you're like, hey, just get out of here, will you? Come on, move on. They might not be selfish, rude people. They might just not understand the charging curve.
I have a good point on that. The EV database now will give you max charging, but also average charging on the specifications, which is great to see. And on that last bit of that charging, because the charging curve dips off, I was recently driving the Fiat 500e, and it was 5 minutes to get to 80%, and it was going to be another hour to get from 80 to 100% on a 50 kilowatt charger.
Wow.
It drops off a cliff. So yeah, people need to be aware of where the sweet spot is.
Yeah, and that will come in time as well. And just another point there, because we mentioned the Mach-E and the Polestar. You know, as we hit 30% in the Tesla Model E, just reaching their maximum. The i4, BMW i4, that's just been really getting a lot of attention at the moment. That does go to 200 kilowatts as well. So we cannot wait to get our hands on that car and see how that charging curve matches up. But yeah, we've hit 40% as well. And it only took 11 minutes to get there, which is absolutely fantastic. And also, the thing I want to say about at this 40% speed, I've now dropped down to about 100 and what is there on the screen? You know, it's just over, let me see now, 110, is it?
Eagle-eyed.
But the thing is, the speeds that I'm getting now are matching up with what I would have got if I was plugged into a V2 supercharger, presuming nobody's on the combined, you know, the stall beside it sharing the load.
Because you did the V2 the day before, so you had a reference.
I did, yeah. No, I didn't fully document that, but I took a couple of pictures as I was going down through the charts. And so when we talk about getting this 200 kilowatt peak speed, yeah, that did happen. But by the time it got down, we're then matching the V2 supercharger speeds anyway. But key to say there is that V3 superchargers, they stand alone. They'll give you everything they can, whereas not the case on V2 superchargers.
It's low balanced. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So will we kick on there now again and play that? So let's just roll that right now. You know, coming up on 50% and still holding on to 100 kilowatts, which is really, really impressive. And then another thing as well, as we get up towards the 60% mark, then is that's where we're at the 20-minute mark. And that's just a really, for me anyway, that's a nice time, because that's when you go in, you use the toilet quickly, you grab yourself a coffee or a Coke or whatever it is, and then you're back on the road again. And we've already put in 60%. And in the Model 3 long range, that gets you a lot of miles.
I've noticed when you leave the car, and I can see you getting in and getting out just with the car moving, and the screen turns to a much larger percentage so that you can visually see it if you're outside on the phone or whatever it may be, so you can keep an eye, whereas it knows when you're sitting in the car, you can get a lot more detail. So I like that feature.
Yeah, it was nice. It just felt like this was a better screen for the recording as well. And there we are. We're coming up hitting 70% now. So we're at the region where the new MG ZS EV long range will be peaking at those kind of speeds. But yeah, hit the 60% in 20 minutes, which is fantastic. And interesting to note that first 30% took 8 minutes, whereas the next 30% to get us up to 60 took 13 minutes. And I can guarantee it's going to be a lot longer to get up to 90% then, you know.
I think you might have an insight into this, Blake. I'm not going to put a bet on with you. It seemed that you were sitting in the car for the whole event.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there we are, just hitting 80% as well, and barely half an hour. So like that's just enough time to go in, get yourself a little snack and a sandwich, and you're back on the road. Now, also at that 80% mark as well, that's enough to get me home, which is an important point. We might just pause the video there for a second, Derek. Just pause that now. So we've gone past the 80% mark. I live 300 kilometers away. So trying to do mental maths on that. What's it, just under 200 miles, maybe 180 or something like that. From that point to my house. So I could have left then. So when people say, oh, it took an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and a half or 2 hours to charge the car, well, that was just to go to 100%. I had plenty in the tank at that stage to get me home in winter at full motorway speeds, by the way, Yeah,
I think people are, as you said, it's a mind shift, and people need to consider, what do I need to put in now to get me to the next charging station or to get me home? I don't need, it's not like traditional fossil fuel where I'm filling this up because I don't want to come back to this again. I'm going to get to the next plug, be that my home charger or destination charger.
Oh, absolutely. And on top of that, I'm paying, let's just take a rough figure here because it's going to be different in different currencies all over the world, but 30 € per kilowatt hour of energy. Why would I stay plugged in now when I know the second I get home that evening, I'm going to plug in and get a night rate, which is about 10 cents, so a third of the price. Exactly. I'm not going to stick around and just twiddle my thumbs in an electric car, Although I can watch Netflix there, which is fantastic.
You can watch Netflix at home too, Blake, though. Don't forget that.
Well, that's true, but maybe I was supposed to say something about the dog and the kids getting in the way of it. But anyway, so yeah, we might get this rolling now. Let's just let that roll there again because we're going past 80%. We're heading up towards 90%, and it really starts to slow down at this stage. Now we're still getting up around the 50 kilowatt mark there, even then at 90% is down to 30. And then as we get to 95%, still holding on to the likes of 25. Like those kind of speeds at around that 40 kilowatt mark, that's all you'll ever get in most cars on a lot of the older DC fast chargers that we have littered around now. So exactly. pretty impressive. So we'll just kind of let the clip roll. People can watch that in the background there. And there's a couple of points that we want to talk about as well as we move on. So just to summarize it before we actually do hit the 100% there, it takes an hour and 20 minutes to go from 1% up to 100.
On a V3 supercharger, preconditioned, and the temperature was around about...
it was kind of that 6, 7, 8, 9 degrees centigrade. Yeah,
Okay.
thereabouts. But having said that, when we looked at the fastnet curve, you know, that will be different. It's going to be different all over the world. So people watching this say, well, that's not what the Model 3 does. I got better. Yeah, maybe you did. I've gotten worse in other situations. You know, I plugged it into a fast charger the day before I recorded that video, and it peaked at 37 kilowatts on a charger that's good for 50. And I just couldn't figure out where that difference was. Loss in transmission. Yeah, fair enough. But not 10 or 12 kilowatts, you know?
No, exactly. That's a lot.
Yeah.
We're nearly there.
Yeah. My overall impressions of the Supercharger network, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but absolutely brilliant. Like that experience, because anybody who hasn't seen the previous video that we released a couple of weeks ago, that was me getting the battery down to 1% in order to record this. But the difference between that experience and having driven, you know, a Nissan Leaf on longer trips, and even some of the more modern ones, you know, an MG, the MG5, you know, which had a good 200 miles in it. Just knowing that Supercharger network was there at the end of the trip meant I was happy enough to run it down to 1% and pull up with a supercharger. I would not do that at any other charging station in the country.
Yes, so you've got the confidence of going further. You've got the confidence that you're going to fill up faster. You know, there's a lot of benefits to it, and we hear that all the time from Tesla drivers. Supercharger network is the difference and the reasons why. Now, it's not great in every single country around the world, and I'm sure there are countries that it's not a deciding factor because there just isn't that coverage. But in a lot of countries that Tesla are strong in, you're going to have a very strong supercharger network.
It's very true. And also, you take, like, only as we're recording this now in the last few days, they've been opening up the supercharger in Holland, in the Netherlands. So we're going to see a lot more of that in some countries faster than others. Maybe it's never going to happen, you know, in the US, for example, or in certain states where, you know, California, they need those chargers. You know, they're not going to be giving them out to certain other brands, which will be parked sideways and at stalls and stuff to reach the units, you know.
If you haven't already, make sure that you've subscribed to our channel. Make sure that you've liked the video. Leave a comment and let us know what your experience of superchargers is. Have you been one of the lucky ones that isn't a Tesla one but has used a supercharger? You are a unicorn at the moment within the EV world. But let us know where you're watching and what the supercharger network is like. Blake, any final words for those people out there that have enjoyed the video?
No, not really. It more just about keeping an open mind on those charging curves, and that this is part of an education piece in the broader scheme. You know, us here, maybe you watching this, you know your EVs, you love them. Not everybody does, so it's about just keeping that education piece going.
Perfect. This has been EV Platform.
Thank you very much for watching.